all the papers.
Well, we'll have a meeting, and I'll show up with a couple of them, and inevitably there'll be more people.
All the papers.
Well, we'll have a meeting. Hold on a second, Paul. I'm trying to figure out technical stuff here. All right, that should work. We shouldn't have an echo. Paul, you can still hear us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We're a little behind.
I was behind on the Paul, can I confirm that you can hear us still?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Great.
You got it. All right, we're ready to roll. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Let's call the February 4th, 2022 meeting of the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission Executive Committee to order. I do need to note that for the Commission's adopted policy, 2 members requested remote participation in advance of the meeting due to personal matters, and the members present in person need to approve that participation. So I'll need a motion from those in the room to approve remote participation for Mr. McCullough and later on here. A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we had a draft agenda distributed prior to today's meeting. Does anybody have any additions or changes, issues with the agenda? If not, we have to adopt the agenda. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. I don't see any public here. Did you hear from anyone prior to?
There were no comments received.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, we need to look way back to January, a year ago, and to December's meeting minutes. You guys have had a chance to look at those. Any corrections, issues to the minutes? And if not, we need a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move that. No, I didn't see anything. Feeling comfortable voting since I was participating.
For the first one.
So moved.
Okay, all right, we have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Just you.
Yeah, yes, we have one that abstained, I'm sorry. Okay, on to new business. In October 2020, the Commission asked the Executive Committee to review the organization's compensation structure. So Patrick put together a report, and if you could review that for us.
We'll do so. So, and this was discussed a year ago, at least in terms of the initial plans that I had made to do this, and I did follow through. I shared a draft with Chair Taylor, I think probably in late this year, August, September timeframe. This was on the agenda for December for the commission meeting without the quorum. Felt it was better to defer, but wanted to talk through with you all just what my recommendations and sort of the report is. So the two main or the primary sources for comparing the existing staff compensation, I've pulled from every 2 years, the Virginia Association of Planning District Commissions does a salary survey, voluntary, but this past early in 2021, we did have full participation from all 21 planning district commissions. So that's a good benchmark in terms of our fellow regional commissions across the state. What I did was pull the positions that they had. We set up as a spreadsheet. Generally, there's common position, executive director, administrative staff, regional planners at various levels. So I pulled that information and compared to ours. And if you're looking in the report itself, it's kind of the last 8 pages or so where that's all broken down for you all, just to see the specific positions and sort of the comparisons to other PDCs. The other comparisons I use, and this is broken down on sort of the section 3, which is the comparable positions within the local governments in the region. Several of them either have completed salary surveys, either on a regular basis, annually or biannually, or they have their pay scale and sort of position and classification plans available that I was able to access either through request or just posted online. So that was the other place where I compared our compensation structure to, and that's broken down there again in section 3, really where I compared that to. So with regional planners, it was generally fairly simple with planning or community development staff. Once we get into some of our more specialized positions, again, looked at mostly planning and community development staff, some administrative staff that in a lot of cases at local governments can be function in multiple different departments. And then we had a couple of positions that, really were more on the sort of the social services side. So I did pull social services where that was available. Ultimately, what I would call your kind of attention to would be the comparisons on the last few pages, which really breaks down, where the commission is in terms of, longevity of the current person in the position, as well as the comparative kind of salary ranges, or in the case of the other planning district commissions, their pay scale as that person is that's currently in the position. Really, where I would recommend and sort of my recommendation of where this should go is on page 16 of the packet, and it's really a general pay plan that I would recommend, and this is based off of again the local government scales, but also looking at what other commissions are currently paying. My reason for this is really to give some flexibility, not only for myself in terms of being the executive director and having some ability there, but also to communicate to the staff that there are opportunities for growth. It's not just okay, you're in a position and you can expect cost of living increases, things of that nature. I really would like to at least have this in place to show that there is opportunity for coming in, and there is a kind of coordinated effort to provide that promotion opportunity, as well as pay increase opportunity with additional responsibility and experience. What this pay plan does show is there's the items in gray are sort of what I've called positions that don't currently exist, or kind of levels that don't currently exist at the commission or are unfilled right now. There's not a deputy director position. I don't think at this point in time there needs to be one, but I could see in the future that being something not only for potentially current staff, but just in terms of the workload and the activities that we undertake, that being the position to look at. The finance director position is there primarily because right now we have and have for 20 years a part-time kind of fiscal officer and grants administrator. Again, that's something that in the future, depending on complexity and depending on needs, could be a full-time position, and so that's sort of placed there just for comparison's sake and to have that sort of memorialized in that pay plan. And then you see sort of the regional planner one is a position that we just don't currently have anyone on staff that fills that position. We have in the past, and I could definitely see in the future having that. And then program manager is one that sort of would be a new creation. And honestly, that's there because there's a couple of positions that are fairly specialized that, with a little bit of kind of growth in the position, but also the programs and projects that they're working on, potentially could have some people that would benefit from the creation of such a position, just because it goes beyond, managing a project or two or being a regional planner, but really taking on some additional responsibility with some of the grants that we have that are more, utilized and long-term or have been pretty stable. So again, that's not one that currently exists, but would be one that could be created and would fill a need for what I've seen just from the organization and from the administrative side. I'm happy to answer questions. I will note that I did not, I included the, for your benefit or for the commission's benefit, when they see this, the executive director information, obviously that would be something the commission, controls, that, and I'm happy to provide that, or you can, move it as you feel. That's at the commission's discretion for that one. Ultimately, if this, sort of the pay plan right here, if this were something that the commission was willing to take on and grant that sort of flexibility within the budget, I think for FY23, it would probably be a, 15, 20,000 increase in terms of what we're currently paying for positions. We have several positions that are within, based on the comparisons that frankly are well, within what local governments or within a local government structure or what other PDCs are paying. There are a couple of positions that, in my opinion, would benefit from, an increase in pay based on, comparisons. But I think, again, that's a $15,000 to $20,000 addition as part of, either, this current year's budget or next year's budget for a full year. And I think, if the decision or the desire from the commission is to go through that as part of the FY 2023 budget process, then it's certainly something we can incorporate there. I don't anticipate it being something that requires, pulling from reserves. I think we've got, grants and other funding that could cover this, but, I definitely feel like it's something that could be implemented at the commission's discretion without a need for us immediately going out and identifying, we need to adjust dues or anything like that. I think it's something that within our current dues structure and within our current grants, it's definitely feasible. I'm happy to answer questions or talk through, any of the information that's in there.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So right now, you don't have any kind of formal structure that you're using.
Correct.
So you want to put this in. I would normally when I see these, so I have a couple of questions. Normally when I see these, they'll have steps as well as grades. And I see you have a minimum, middle, and a maximum. So I presume that are you going to set up steps, or are you just as part of this process so that you have someone who moves along the steps and there's an opportunity if they show great improvement to move them 2 steps or whatever the process is? That part of your thinking?
So if I understand correctly, I think that would be something as part of our, I meet with everybody doing an annual review.
Right.
I would say that would be the time where it would be, relevant to say, okay, it would be recommended as part of last year's budget to go through that process. Traditionally, and this is from myself having been staff here, there's not really been merit adjustments ever implemented. There's been cost of living on a fairly regular basis, but there's not really been any process to say, other than at times one-time adjustments where it's been a specific request for a position taken back to the commission for approval as part of the budget process.
Then the second question that I have is, I presume you set up, these are not state grades, these are your own grades.
These are purely ones that I created. There are a couple other PDCs that have similar things. I use those as a model, but these are my own numbers.
And how do you differentiate a 6 from a 7? Do you have, you don't need to explain it all because I'm sure you have lots of good stuff, but I'm assuming that you have something that helps you define what is a grade 6 versus a grade 7 position.
Yeah, so I think, and some of that is shown there. I think it's mostly responsibility, and a lot of it ends up being, in terms of the job descriptions themselves, what a grade 8 versus grade 7 versus grade 6 is responsible for. So in this case, the example you gave, 6 versus 7, really a grade 6 for us is somebody that comes in with, bachelor's minimum, potentially a master's, probably not a lot of experience, but someone that comes in and is being supervised and given tasks, but generally has somebody that's overseeing their work on a regular basis.
So you have like a point system or some kind of way of taking qualitative ratings and putting them into a quantitative system of saying, okay, yeah, this person deserves to be a 6 and then this person deserves to be a 7.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of how it's done now, I think it's more of the position has these responsibilities.
Right.
If you fulfill them, then you're there. And, arguably what I would say for me is if somebody comes in at a 6 and is fulfilling as a regional planner 1 and shows, okay, I'm taking on more responsibility, I'm willing to do that, I'm performing well, then that would be when the discussion would be, okay, you've added on, 3 years of experience, which is the minimum for a grade 7 or something along those lines.
I guess, though, I think you're doing this, Patrick, and I don't mean to be painting you in a corner. It's the last thing. What I'm really suggesting is that you have some means by which you justify why this position is a 6 and this position is a 7.
Right. So I would say we do have, every position obviously has a job description. I think when we outline the responsibilities, but I do recognize, especially for the positions that are not like deputy director or finance director, those would be ones that I would develop those. They're not currently sitting there in place.
This year, was there any difference this year? Oh,
But we did COLA, and as part of the fiscal year.
I remember back at the minutes, what I was looking at was, I thought there was a discussion about adjustments, there it is, the potential adjustments included as part of fiscal year 22.
So we did cost of living 3% as part of FY22. There weren't adjustments made to this, mostly because of the timing of the report.
The COLA is 6.1.
So not when we talk about COLA, it's basically, what we've done historically is what are the local governments doing?
Gotcha.
What's not so much an average, but what are, and also, the other thing that I want to make clear is that, a lot of times for local governments, your budgets are, different than ours. Ours are very much, grant driven. And so I think one of the reasons too, this would be beneficial is it gives us some long-term kind of ability to say, okay, with grants, we know we need to be bringing this much in. I wouldn't want to implement this, or with a COLA, it's always with a jumping to, okay, well, our dues rate is 83 cents. We would need to add 10 cents to the dues rate. That's not the goal for me. The goal here is really to provide staff some retention opportunities. But also I think, it's not tied to the COLA at the federal level.
The other one is it, all we're looking at here really is to establish a.
For me, that document there, or that table would be beneficial. I think what I would, also as part of the budget in FY 2023, would then, sort of seek to say, okay, I've got some adjustments internally based off of the adopted policy that are being rolled into this.
In your comparisons there, I mean, most of them fell very well, close.
Right. Yeah, and honestly, there's 2 positions that I would say are probably below that I've targeted. I think there's, with some of the other current staff, it would be more of a, okay, if we can sort of put you on a path to taking on more responsibility to move up. But I think right now, and that's why I say it's a for across the board, it's a $15,000 ask for the year. But again, I think we've got that internally within the budget already without doing any sort of increase.
I commend you for putting this together because it makes it seem a lot less arbitrary. And sometimes executive director of any organization, you place people on it can seem very arbitrary. But if you have, you start doing this kind of documentation stuff to back up and stuff so that you put them on a particular grade, I think it will benefit you and the organization for the long term.
Thank you. And I do think, that's for me too, this is also something that for the organization long term would be beneficial. I think one of the other recommendations I made is at some point, whether it's tying in with a local government that's doing this or paying a consultant, it'd probably be beneficial to have somebody outside look at it too, since this is very much just my work. But I do think it would benefit the organization to have this in place.
You have anything to add? Any questions? Yeah, I think it's also very important. I think one of you mentioned it as far as retention as well. Just being able to keep good people and give them a path to
Right now, we've lost a lot of people.
right, I mean, it's,
It-
yeah,
Yeah, everywhere right now, I mean, across the department. For better for this, you would want us to make a recommendation for board meeting, yes?
I mean, I think that would be beneficial, at least. I mean, I think it would help to be able to say executive committee reviewed.
Yeah.
We'll share, I mean, really what was provided to you will be provided for the full commission to review as well. And certainly if there's questions, but, I think that would be beneficial. The opportunity to raise questions already as well.
We had the opportunity with Chief Finley, retirement, frankly, I hate that we were able to move pretty much everybody up in the police department. That meant a lot.
sure.
I mean, so many of them feel like there's no place to go. And you have to have something like this to show them that you actually can
Mhm.
move.
And I also want to state, I've not had, this isn't something where I've had staff come in and say, I demand this, but again, I feel like we've got good people in place. And so this is a way of sort of ensuring that there's, keeping them without them having to put something like this in place. It's trying to be proactive.
At the University of Virginia. And so as a state employee and different steps, it worked very well. The only reason I bring that up is because you were talking about a consultant. Wondering if the local government organization might have some guidance, especially since I think the state is still using their system to help you understand. I think I know of some minefields out there, but I'm not going to share them with you, only because they one source is go to them because they'd be familiar.
Well, and I know that Mr. McCullough has offered, Fauquier County does, similar type things. Town of Culpeper also sat in on a couple of their interview panels for positions and talked to their HR director. I know she does similar things. So I think there are resources. If that's something that we want.
Yeah, that's correct.
Related note to this, Patrick does the annual reviews for staff here at the I asked him, and as long as I've been here, I don't know how the process goes for reviewing our director. And I don't know that there is a formal.
I'm still here.
But I mean, it'd be something we need to, I think, at some point,
I agree.
have a discussion on how we want to do that.
Any feedback?
I mean, informal, but not a formal.
There's no formal process.
And you do a formal review of all the staff?
So, yeah, we sit down, with a, here's the kind of checklist. Really, the way I prefer to do it is, not so much here's where you're doing great or whatnot. It's more of a, how are things going and to check in, but there is a formal review process to their personnel.
I guess Mayor Coyner, who's been on the executive committee for a long time, would be more familiar with Elliot, as I recall, as a member several years ago when it was brought up before the full board.
Mhm.
Other than that, I don't really remember it being mentioned that much.
Now, my understanding from the previous director is that it just wasn't unless it was a specific ask or something tied to something specific. So it wasn't a regular thing.
Everybody needs to have.
Worked here for just under 16 years and director from was 6.
But yeah, like you said, Mayor Pointer may be able to provide us with some information.
He brought it up more than once, as I recall.
And all of us in our towns and counties have a process for reviewing managers, directors, and
I think it's a good idea.
we need to put something together. I think.
I'm here to recommend this new structure that Patrick is proposing.
I think it'd be fine to have that.
Yeah.
And then I would add to that a recommendation from the executive committee that chair of the board task out a small group to kind of figure out exactly, working with Patrick to figure out an annual review process for the executive director.
I was gonna say, you
I've
got
got
that,
it.
you got that motion. It's, do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? Great, all in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. Okay. Looks like budget amendments are the next item for discussion. Staff's prepared a summary of budget amendments for the current fiscal year.
Excuse me, before you go, did we finish everything that you wanted? Do we need to talk about the specific salary figures for the different employees, or is that done at your discretion?
So what I would say is, I don't know that you need to take any action on that. I guess what I would say is, if it, as it comes up in, at the full commission meeting or as part of the budget process, where I think it goes back to, I don't think it's in the bylaws. I think it's actually in some old personnel policies where it sort of says all salaries are set at the commission's discretion. I think loosening that up would be beneficial for me from being able to respond, but I don't know that that's certainly not something today that I was prepared to ask.
Right.
You bring up another thing, the personnel policies, how are they? I mean, I have to take my personnel policies up with the council.
Right. So personnel policies, and I talked about this with the chair, they are something that's been on my list for a long time. They tend to be low on the list and get pushed down. So they actually are, they're in need of some significant revision and probably benefit from just starting over. I've got a couple of templates from other PDCs that I like that I would probably pull as part of my annual reviews with staff. One particular staff member offered to say if that's something I can help take off the plate, and I said that's probably a good thing, because I'll probably be having the same conversation a year from now if I don't, at least give them the chance to sort of take the templates and draft up. So that is, something that's on my task list, has been on there, but I would hope that this year I'd have something to.
Are all employees on contracts? I'm sure every employee has a job description.
Yes.
Are they on a contract also, or are they on a?
I mean, every commission employee at will is what I would
Right.
describe it as.
But you can still be on a contract or some kind of agreement and still be an at-will employee.
Right. I mean, I think other than being offered the position and working,
And getting the
there's
job description.
there's no contraction.
Well, we also do personnel policies
Right.
as to your vacation and holiday,
Right.
all that part of the agreement, as I see it.
Right. And that's all, I mean, that is all in existing personnel policies. It's just that they are, again, were probably written, in bulk more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And had some minor adjustments made to them to keep up with certain things, but
It probably needs to be.
Would anybody like those current policies as they are now to look at,
I
bounce it,
certainly
send
share them.
ideas?
I would think that, I would like to see it, like you're talking about, somebody getting it up to date.
So my anticipation would be, going through that process, updating them with here's what the new ones look like. And then as part of that, providing back either to executive committee or to the full commission, here's the current ones, as they stand, here's what we're recommending going to,
Yeah.
because this will, and, there's certain things that, need to be added in. Where the COVID-19 introduced the idea for, remote work.
Yeah.
Our personnel policies don't have a remote work piece, but there's that temporary COVID-19 policy that we've sort of been
Right.
using and has worked. I think that would be beneficial as part of the new personnel policies to roll that in, but also have the formal structure of saying, in this case, remote work is a privilege, not a right, and can be revoked by a supervisor or executive director as and when they determine. Mostly because if I leave and you get a new executive director, I wouldn't want to hamstring them with, staff that thinks, well, I can do it for, remote work. It's here to stay forever. So that's one example.
So we do well.
Okay, anything else? Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, again, going back to the budget amendments, Patrick has some information to share with us. It's going to be presented later in the month to the full commission, but any comments or direction from this smaller committee? Appreciate it, Patrick.
Yeah, and I apologize. My cover letter, I definitely did not update the percentages. Where I said we're at 85% of revenues through 6 months of the year. That is definitely wrong. We're at just under 50% through 50% of the year, and on expenses we're just below 40%. That both of those are fairly typical for where we are. But again, this will be presented as part of the full commission meeting. I just wanted to put this on for you all, for your all information ahead of time. And actually, I will say there's going to be probably at least one additional change to what was put together early this week, just to some other funding that came in as pass-through funding. But you can see really the main changes are the Path Foundation had awarded us additional money compared to last year from mobility management. That's $47,500. That's entirely being passed through to partner organizations for their work or to other program expenses. So it's not netting us anything, but it was an additional revenue. The Chesapeake Bay Grant through National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, we're reducing that. We had originally budgeted about $200,000 in expenses. We're reducing that down to about $125,000, primarily because not because the money won't be spent and it won't be approved here, but because of timing of construction, frankly, and for projects in Fauquier County and the town of Warrenton that will be underway, I believe, this year, but likely won't be reimbursed until some of them won't be reimbursed until after the turn of the fiscal year. So we'll put those with FY 2023. As with last year, we were awarded the full amount that we requested through the rideshare program grant through Department of Rail and Public Transportation. They had continued to limit advertising. They awarded the full amount, but have continued to say we don't really want to advertise. I will share with you that that kind of guidance has changed pretty much 180 degrees with the change in administration at the state. So we have been told, okay, start thinking about advertising. You can start thinking about traveling to conferences again. So we expect that we're going to reduce it for this year because we didn't spend much of anything in the first, other than staff time and some limited supporting and supplies costs. So we're reducing it from about $20,000 from $133,000 to $113,000 in terms of revenues. But we do anticipate that that's going to change certainly moving forward into next year, but also for the last 5 months of this fiscal year. We've broken out redistricting assistance for Culpeper County, Rappahannock County, Town of Warrenton. So about 4,500. All three of those processes have moved fairly simply so far. And then there's some about just over $5,300 in Rural Transportation Assistance Program. That's for scholarships for partners, partner organizations with the Regional Transportation Collaborative to have attended some training for which we got reimbursement for that and passed through to them. So on the expense side, it's very much the similar as I just talked about, the path money for mobility management, the reduction in the Chesapeake Bay with grants in equal amount to the revenue reduction. The rideshare program, because that's an 80-20 match, we're not going to reduce the revenues by $20,000. That actually reduces our expenses by $25,000 because we're not expending that local match on that advertising. Redistricting, we've got expenses for software and some of the direct expenses such as travel to meetings that we're breaking out from that line. And then the Rural Transportation Assistance Program that I just mentioned. And we've also added a line item for partner school expenses, $1,000, and that is completely for travel. As shared at the October meeting in Washington when Liz presented the commission, she is out during the school year. She is out at least 3 days a week, often 4 and sometimes 5, to schools in the region. Last week she was in 1 day in Rappahannock, 1 day in Madison, 1 day in Orange, and 1 day in Culpeper. This week she had 2 in Orange and 2 in Fauquier, including today. So she is out and about in the schools doing exactly what we want her to do. So we've just broken that out. Those funds we got grant funding from Path Foundation and No Kid Hungry Virginia. So the expenses there are covered by those grant funds. We have not exceeded what we took in for that. So just breaking it out because they are directly tied to that program. And then the last thing, and maybe for some discussion, would be with those changes recommended. As I mentioned, we will have one more kind of completely pass through for the town of Washington, which will add to this. But Really where that leaves us is just over $49,000 in unprogrammed revenues. So the chair and I have talked. I mean, I think we have some options there. Some of that could be carry over to FY 2023, either for the compensation changes or for other projects that we're looking to take on. Some of that money could be used to pay down the mortgage, the note on the building that the commission owns. Here we owe about, I think we're down to about 160,000 on that note. So, you know, it's not something we've ever run into any issues paying on, but it's always an option. We've got about just under 7 years left on those payments. So anyways, we're in a good position, and there's, you know, the ability for the executive committee or the commission to look at how to hold those funds, or, you know, put them into the reserve and hold them for future. Is always an option.
Patrick, what's the source of that 49,000?
So in most cases, you know, I think it's from either lower expenses on grants that we're sourcing from the discretionary funds that we receive. So that's the local per capita dues, as well as the just under 90,000 we get from the General Assembly paid out. In general, when we have a grant that comes in, those are often reimbursable and, you know, have direct, if we have an expense, we get reimbursed for that amount. So anything over that is, you know, what I would call the discretionary funds that we take in.
So it helps me understand. So ABC Foundation or what have you gives you 100,000, end up fulfilling their need for which it was being funded, ends up being 95,000. That 5,000 then becomes discretionary funds. Or am I reading that?
Well, it depends. So, like, if we look at the line items here for if it's a state or federal agency, such as well, I take that back. Let me take it back. If it's mobility management through DRPT, if it's ride-share income, which is also DRPT, rural transportation planning, which is VDOT, and then wildfire analysis as well as VHSP. Those are all state agency funding sources. Some of it's federal money that the state takes in and then passes out. Some of it is state money that they have control of.
Right.
Those ones would be reimbursable grants where we submit expenses and they pay us back for the.
So you end up just getting whatever you spend. Okay.
With some of the other ones, and this actually spans, so the DEQ Chesapeake Bay capacity building grant is with the state agency, but it's a contract grant where we have a work plan with deliverables, and if we fulfill the deliverables, they pay us the flat amount of $58,000.
Okay.
So that would be, you know, potentially a source where, you know, our expenses might not always be $58,000, but we're contracted to do a job.
And Virginia Housing also a state, or is that a private?
Virginia Housing it's what used to be the HDA. So that is there's sort of a quasi state agency, but the money that they are paying us for the PDC development program is not state tax dollars. It's their proceeds from their loans and the work that they've done in terms of affordable housing. So that's a similar one where, in that case, they are reimbursing us for direct costs. So it's not, you know, us being able to say if they're paying us for a specific thing. So that's one that would be added in there. Path Foundation on there is, you know, again, we're spending the money. We have some in the farm to school was for staff time. The mobility management is a lot of pass-through dollars to partner organizations, but we also have about, I think, we probably have about 5% of that, which we've, you know, doing specific tasks internally with our staff that is being paid for there.
I think it would be helpful when this is presented to the board is if you could give kind of a breakout of where that 49,000 is coming from.
And if I'm not mistaken, would be when your staff is charged out to these projects, you know, what you get from the towns and the localities, you know, it's kind of like covering overhead, maybe the mortgage and stuff like that. There's money left over there too. If you can charge more of your staff for these programs, they get reimbursed.
Right.
So that frees up if you don't use all of that.
Right. And I respect that there are different things. It'd just be, I think, to save us from having to go through the same conversation again, is just to have an understanding of kind of where it comes from would be helpful.
And I appreciate what Mr. Woods just said, because that's something I've done in the past, is break out for the local dues, which totals about 149,000. Being able to break down on those funding sources, again, the DEQ grant, the VDOT grant, they all have matching that we have to provide. And so in general, the local dues come in and we assign that number to, here's how much of the 20% match to VDOT is removed from the town of Orange's dues. And so I could break that down. I mean, that's something I've done before, where it's by locality and sort of said, okay, you've got, leftover, it's, $50 from the town of Orange's dues is what we have left over that goes into that amount. So that, I can definitely do that to break it down that way as well. I think I think where I sort of, and this is probably my own sort of conservative budgeting nature, but, looking at 49,000, that's not enough for me to hire a full-time position.
Right.
So it's a question of, well, do we try to hire part-time? Do we put it somewhere else? Where do we, or is it something where, okay, we've got 40,000 and that could pay for a consultant to do something at a regional level? Or
But if we know where it's coming from, that might help us understand guidance as to how that 49,000 might be spent. If it's a one-off thing, then it makes sense to maybe put some into the it's something we anticipate some of it is likely to happen on a regular basis, then we can deal with that a little bit.
Along those lines, historically, I don't recall from budgets past, this is an outlier, is it not, having this much?
on occasion we've had, and actually it's actually in the expense document this year too, even though we don't have anything. So we have a reserve line item, and so sometimes that'll have 5 or 10,000 that we've assigned as, okay, we're choosing to assign that budget item to go into our reserve for future needs. In this case, I think because of the amount of it, I think the choice that I made with Jerry, the finance director, was listed there because it's a larger amount.
Right. I'm budgeted.
And I guess too, with it being pandemic year, is that responsible for some of this? And is that when we get back to hopefully a more normal lifestyle and things, is that number again going to be just an outlier for 1 year?
I would anticipate that, although last year was somewhat similar, because really where that number rises from, it's partially, if we can break down by source. I think we could also look at on the expense side, last year and this year, our budget for travel and training or technology and equipment have been high because we've made some investments there. But a lot of the operating costs, office maintenance, printing, some of the things that are fairly small have been very small in terms of our expenses. Travel and training has started to pick up a little bit because we're able to travel and people are having in-person meetings. But some of those items, as they were kept at the rate they were pre-COVID, we've not hit that expense mark. And so that's also created some of that, not so much the end program, but at the end of the year, okay, we've got a larger amount than we would have thought.
Again, will help us in understanding whether this amount will be there a year or not. What do you need from us? Do you need endorsement from the executive committee, or are you just showing it to us out of grace and courtesy and we'll go on?
Typically this would be something that if there wasn't a meeting today, then it will be on the February 23rd full commission meeting. I think, I've also talked with Chair Miller as well about, I think at times it's somewhat beneficial from a staff perspective to have the smaller executive committee together to hear these things. It's duplicated for you all, but at times it's beneficial because then as it comes up in a meeting, if there's a question, it's not me answering the question, it's other people that have a little bit of understanding of what we're talking about.
And you can also anticipate some of
the questions.
left field questions that come up.
The try one. Okay. All right. Anyone else have anything on this topic? Thank you all very much. Okay. Moving on, as you may recall, the Commission received 9 proofs of concept in December for the PDC Housing Development Program. The total request came to $6.2 million, of which we have $2 million to play with. So staff followed up with interested applicants and received 7 full applications. So you can update us on those and where we are with that now.
I'm gonna spreadsheet up on the screen. Hopefully, Paul, you can see that.
I can.
So just to give you a sense, and part of this, the work that we're doing internally now is actually having conversations with local governments about the projects that have come in. So we've got projects, 2 in Culpeper, both in the town, 3 in Fauquier County, 2 would be in the county, 1 would be within the town of Warrenton. We've got a project in Orange, which is actually in the town, and then a project in Madison within the town of Madison. So what we've got here is sort of this column E is sort of the total request that we received. And the over budget is over what we have to give out. So we have some decisions to make. What myself and Jennifer Little, the primary staff person on this project are doing is she's going to be out this week and next week, predominantly meeting with on site at some of these sites, at some of these proposed sites, so that we can verify some of the questions that we have. What we will do is share with you all, probably through a shared folder, a Google Docs folder or otherwise, is the applications we received, and would request if you have time to read through them and make any comments. We've sort of moved away from the idea of here's the scoring structure. It's more what we're looking for is making sure we've not missed anything as staff and that other people have put their eyes on these requests. Certainly in some cases, one of the things, column H is property status. So whether there's site control or not, we have to, these projects have to be built out. Ideally Virginia Housing would like to see them built out by June 30th, 2024. There's a potential for an additional year, as long as they're making progress and are to be completed by then. But we've got, that's one of the things we've looked at is certainly with site control, that gives a project a greater likelihood of happening. The one thing that we did do between what I reported in December and these full applications was because of that total number of 6.2 million, we did ask applicants to cap their requests at 500,000 or 50,000 per unit. You'll see a couple of them exceed that 50,000 per unit. So part of our conversations and discussions with those applicants will be, if we're limiting you to that, can you still go forward? My sense is that most of these projects can go forward no matter what we give them, but this is a chance to make some investments in some of the affordable housing opportunities in the region. So this is just the quick update there. Like I said, the request from me will probably come next week of, if you have time to put your eyes on the information that we have for these projects, we would appreciate it, and certainly would give us the ability to feel like it's not just primarily 2 staff people making some decisions. We've also asked some housing stakeholders in the region from Path Foundation to again look through and make any comments that they have, as well as some other staff internally besides the 2 of us that are primarily working on it. But what I would anticipate for the February 23rd meeting is having a recommendation of funding going to projects for the commission to approve. We've got some tight deadlines for a couple of the projects with low-income housing tax credit applications, which happened in March. So we're trying to respect that. But this would be sort of our first pass at saying here's the awards we would make. I would also say that several of these projects, if they are awarded funds, would have some contingencies on that award to make sure that, again, if they're looking for tax credit dollars, that they would be successful in that, because we need to see that in order for the project to be completed. And we don't want to allocate our funding and have them spend it and say, actually, we couldn't finish it. And so then that would be difficult for us. So that's sort of where we are. I think we have a plan to get down to that, 1.8 million range of awards. But the other thing I would say is that, and we've shared this with applicants as well as some that did not apply, but sort of said, I would have, if I had known or if I had more time, I would have, is that with some of those contingencies, there's always the opportunity in the next 6 to 12 months of having some of this funding come back and having to make an award, either to existing projects or to other projects that didn't come in this time. So we're trying to be flexible with that and allow for the process to continue to work out and not have this just be a one-time thing, and that's absolutely it. So unless there's specific questions on that or concerns with what I've outlined, that's sort of where we're at with the program at this point.
I always have a question. And the question is, how do you plan to make your allocation decisions defensible?
So, and pull this spreadsheet back up just to give you some of the first couple items is we've looked at, not only the property status, which I think is one where we really feel like needs to be, is an important piece. It's not a deal breaker, but it's one where we've sort of felt like there needs to be some idea that we've got to path forward here. The other piece is, and we've sort of broken it down here, is geographically. We've tried to be respectful of looking at projects across the region and targeting funding projects in as many jurisdictions as possible. And then we've also got sort of the average per unit breakdown. The other thing, and there's a couple other spreadsheets here, which I don't want to open up right now, but they talk about the breakdown of units at certain percentages of median income, how they plan to assign funding that way. So we've got various pieces that are playing into that.
All right. So basically, when the decision is made, the decision is going to be taking the whole depth and breadth of what you have and just saying, basically, this project hits on these 4 points or what have you, and this other project hits on other points, and you can identify what those points are.
I think that's a good summary. The other thing I would say is that we're, not looking at it as, okay, this project's, and I think that's why we've moved away from the idea of, well, here's this point-based system that would normally be done with like an RFP for professional services or something along those lines. It's very much more of this is a good project. It hits those criteria that we've identified. We'd like to recommend awarding, either the full amount or an amount that would benefit this project. Again, we requested they limit their request to 500,000, 50,000 per unit. We were very clear that does not mean that we will award that. Even if we award you, we can award less than that in order to meet our goals and we've set.
And you said you need, did I misunderstand? Did you want some volunteers to help you review these?
So, yes, from absolutely, I want all of you plus Mayor Coyner's executive committee, but I will share them with you. And if you do have time and want to read through them and make comments, then we would appreciate that, because again, that broadens who's seen these and can at least say, yes, I took a look. And the other thing I will say, as part of that, we'll have the sort of identified state, regional, local goals that we've identified as here's how we're scoring these, or here's how we're making sure they are meeting the needs of the region.
Well, since I don't have a dog in this hunt, I'll be happy to volunteer.
And I will say the other thing too is we've reached out we've talked with most of those localities where the projects will be located to sort of gauge their awareness of the projects as well as support for them, because the last thing that I want to do is award a project and then have the local government or commission members come back and say, what are you thinking? So that's part of it too, is and the applicants are all aware of that. And most of them are at the point where they've had those discussions anyways.
Soon can you have that information for us
And I think I'll have an email out to you all by Monday.
All right, anyone else? Questions? Well, Mayor Coyner's not here. This was kind of his, he brought this up, but at the December meeting, there was discussion of reviewing the commission charter to allow member jurisdictions to appoint alternates as a method of allowing flexibility and ensuring a quorum. Does anybody want to discuss that now or wait till the February?
And that was at the meeting, there was 2 points. One was good so that you can meet a quorum. And then what was the point against it too?
So
Yeah.
That was.
at the December meeting, that was Supervisor Deal from Culpeper County sort of raised the issue. Well, I think, he was voices, being against it. I think primarily because he felt like people should make a commitment if they're appointed. And this is more of a,
Yeah, I was trying to remember what that was.
So, I mean, I can, the process, I mean, this would be a charter amendment process if that would, because the state code is very specific if you want to allow alternates to be appointed. And it's also only for elected official members. So it wouldn't be something, as long as it's elected official, they could have an alternate, but it does require that being included in the charter, which is not currently in our charter.
I think I brought up the compromise of just allowing it maybe twice a year or something like that.
And that, again, that could be included, but it would require that charter amendment process, which is somewhat of a process.
Did Mayor Coiner look at this, and was he planning to submit his recommendation to the executive committee today?
I had not spoken with him on it. It was actually, I added it on this agenda in case that he was here and came
At
up.
his request, or just?
No, it just as staff as a follow-up from the December meeting. So no, there was no communication from him saying I've done X, Y, Z. I will follow up with him before the February meeting. And if he has done or wants it to be added, then we can certainly have it there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable going through it without his
Yeah. It was kind of,
thoughts.
he brought the topic up. Okay. All right, so we'll put that on to February. If everybody's good with that. Later. We are in February. Next up, we're charged with developing a slate of officers in the executive committee. Packets, of course, there's the description, summary of the positions, relevant sections of the bylaws, and a summary of commission members' attendance in the past 2 years, which I didn't realize I missed a meeting. But
Man, I'm a slacker. I've only been 7 of 11.
Per the
All my
bylaws.
radio amendments showing.
Per the bylaws, the chair, the vice chair, and the treasurer are all eligible to serve another term because we can serve 2 years as it stands. But I guess we need to find out whether Mr. McCullough and Mr. Woods would desire to.
I wouldn't unless somebody wants to change. I'm fine. I mean, actually, it's convenient for me. Terry, really convenient.
Right.
How about you, Mr. McCullough?
I'm willing to serve another term.
Okay. Well, that makes that easy, I guess. Um,
How about you? Are you comfortable serving? Don't feel any pressure.
If everybody's good with it, I'll give it another go for a while.
I know, Mr. McCullough, you mentioned last year that you probably would not be, ascending from vice chair to chair. Am I correct in that being still the case?
That's correct. I most likely will not be ascending upwards, giving sort of my view of my timeline, which is still not 100% settled, but
Sure.
I've already told Patrick that I did not want to be or reappointed for the Go Virginia Region 9 group because I would not be able to serve out a 3-year term. So somewhere between now and the end of 3 years, I'm going to be retiring.
So I would say, I mean, that's perfectly fine. I would say that, that would introduce for next year. We'd probably be looking for a new chair and vice chair at the same time. And that's not unheard of, and it's not, I think as long as we.
Well, and if that presents a potential issue to you, I'm perfectly happy to be, slid out and someone else slid into the vice chair position too. Yeah.
Would be an issue to do that, or to have a vice chair and a vice chair both new for next year?
I mean, we've done it before. I don't think it would be that big of a deal as long as it's probably somebody on the executive committee or someone that's shown interest and, and maybe understand that. Jump into the chair position almost immediately. And again, I think the vice chair is one that requires a lot of responsibilities.
Well, and another option, it seems to me, is if we get to a point where I finally have clarified when I'm going to retire, and you don't want this to occur, there's nothing that says that under the bylaws that says that the vice chair couldn't step down midterm and you appoint someone, 6 months, ahead of time. So that person has had a sufficient amount of time as the vice chair to move up to chair.
Makes sense.
I've been involved in nonprofit organizations for all of my life, and it's not common, but if you have the chair and the vice chair are new, as long as the executive director is around,
Yeah.
usually isn't a problem.
That's, yeah.
So clearly, Patrick, you are shackled to your desk for at least 2 years.
All right.
Here.
So, so how do we do this here? I guess
So the other piece so we've got, chair, vice chair, treasurer have all indicated their willingness. So I think keeping that the same is fine. I would say on the executive committee, we did amend the bylaws to make the past chair a member of the executive committee. So Mayor Coiner would remain on. I think, I did not check with him prior to this, but I don't think he will mind that at all. As we dealt this a year ago, we had, Mayor Catlin join the executive committee, and we also had Mr. Hobbs from Madison County, who is no longer in his position. So we have been operating with a 5-person executive committee, which is, again, not unheard of. I think the bylaws again lay out that it could be, we could have a 6th. And I guess what I would say is we've got Mayor Catlin, who may say this is awful and I don't want to stay on the executive committee.
I think I can handle it.
yeah, wonderful. So we just need to find a 6th committee member. Do we have any?
I do want to give, anticipate, is this going through fiscal year July to June?
Yeah, this is March 1, 2022 to February 28, 2023.
So I do not believe I'm going to be running for mayor again, but I think this is allowed that the mayor can appoint. The mayor doesn't necessarily.
It can be any elected official.
Yeah. So he may do that, so I'll be able to say it. No, man.
Just-
Health issues. I don't have to deal with that.
So if you wanted,
Like there's a lot of waffling going on by all of us as to what we're going to do or not do in the future.
That's right.
Well, you inspired me. That's what I have to say.
So I guess in looking at this, if we want representation, I guess, from the entire area, do we have any?
yeah, I think the way that the bylaws read is that, the executive committee, truthfully, the executive committee could be very large the way the bylaws read, but it really is an opportunity for anybody or any jurisdiction, I should say, that's not represented by the officers to have representation. Now, that's historically not been something where, again, that could put the executive committee at, 13 members. It's never been that. And I think it's typically been, 5 to 6. Informally, it's not in the bylaws, but informally, what has often been said is any county or town within a county that's not represented in the officers, I think there's a desire to have that representation. So in this case, Madison County is one that's not represented either by county or town. It's difficult with Madison County because we have Mr. Jackson, who was at the December meeting, was appointed. He's the chair of the board of supervisors, appointed. January will be attending his first meeting, hopefully in February. John Weekly, who's the county administrator, has just joined in October as he took his position. And Mayor Lamar from the town, well, he's attended, it says 2 out of 11 meetings. I will say he's one of the members that when he can't attend, he will respond and let me know if he's got anything he's seen in the agenda. So he's attended that way, but it's just, again, with his job, it's not one that he's able to task. So that, I don't know that there's a spot there. You can see the list of individuals and how often they've attended. So if there's anyone that you would like me to reach out to, anyone that you all would like to reach out to add, whether it's from Madison or just from another of the jurisdictions that's not represented, I think that would be.
Do we have somebody from each county except for Madison?
We do. So we've got Culpeper and then Orange with Mr. Woods and Mayor Coiner, and then Mr. McCullough from Fauquier, and then yourself from,
Rappahannock, Washington.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I would say I would just keep it at this number, and then once everybody feels settled in Madison, get one of those people.
I would agree. That sounds like a good plan.
All right. That works. We're also tasked with nominating an elected official and chief administrative officer for the Go Virginia Region 9 Council, which is in July.
Yeah, so those terms begin July 1st. Mr. McCullough, you
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be out by the end of that term. So I earlier today, when Patrick and I talked to with the CAOs of the group, I indicated to the CAOs that I did not desire to be reappointed to that group, so that we needed someone to do that. And I think that we had one of the CEOs had indicated that they were willing to step up and do that. Right, Patrick?
Mr. Weekly?
that's correct. Yeah. So Mr. Weekly from Madison said he sort of said, as the new guy, I'll take that on. It's a 3-year appointment, so that is helpful. I did speak. The elected official appointee is Mr. Crozier from Orange County, and I talked to him yesterday, and he indicated he would be willing to stay on for another 3 years. So we can, we certainly could, if there was interest in having multiple nominations for that one, that you have somebody for both of those. And those don't begin until July 1st.
Briefly, what is that organization? That endeavor?
The Go Virginia group, the region, our region group, the state of Virginia decided that it wanted to put money into economic development, and they divided the localities into regions, like PD9 sort of concept, except their regions don't necessarily 100% mirror our planning districts. They're larger. So the Go Virginia group that we're on not only handles our planning district, but also Charlottesville, that sort of planning group. And so this group is a group that meets and projects for industrial development that meet the criteria that the state has set up are presented to the group. The group reviews them and then makes recommendations to the state, which then there's a state board, which then takes all of these recommendations in from the various regional groups and then decides how it's going to dole the money out to those projects. Is that about correct there, Patrick?
I would, yeah, you summarized it well, Mr. McCullough. So yeah, just so to echo what Paul just said, it is the way that the regions presented for Go Virginia throughout the state used planning districts, but basically because they wanted fewer than 21 regions, there's 9 Go Virginia regions. So the region for us is Planning District 10, which is Thomas Jefferson PDC, as well as our region. The board it's as Paul said, private sector, as well as some public sector, along with community college and university representatives. So, but again, focus specifically on economic development and some of the to attract higher paying jobs is sort of the main push for it. One thing I would say is I appreciate you asking that in your calendar, because that gives me an idea. I probably should have Shannon Holland, who's the staff person at Central Region Partnership, back out to a commission meeting just to kind of give an update and summarize, because they can benefit from here and there.
Slackers like me who don't attend every meeting.
It's been a while since I probably pre-COVID since she presented to the commission, so it's a good opportunity.
We face our all.
Okay, so we've developed this slate here. Do we don't need to vote on it?
You
we
don't need to vote on it here, just present it to the board. I mean, I'm certain even we could reach out to Mr. Weekly. He may surprise us and say, sure, I'll volunteer for that too. Or we can, as Mr. Bell said, just kind of hold off until they're okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to.
I do have one little nitpicky thing. In reading job descriptions and things like that, everything refers to he and him, all that. And there's not always going to be a female chair, but there will be, I'm sure, again, at some point. So somebody may be more sensitive to it than I am. Then
you're referring into the bylaws themselves?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. I think there's several references.
Yeah, in section 4 under chairman first sentence, which he is present.
Right. So that is a good, and actually, yes, I agree completely. So
I just,
I
like I
do.
said, it doesn't bother me too much, but I'm sure that for others it would be important.
Right on the cover page in terms of responsibilities to remove that sort of, but I agree, the bylaws probably would benefit from reviewing that and making those changes.
It'd be nice in our vernacular if we had something that was a gender neutral term that we use, you know, for.
Just there's always they, I don't know, but anyway. Anyone have anything else? Anything else from you, Mr. McCall?
No, thank you for accommodating my need to be here. We were finishing off my proposed budget, hopefully this morning, to take it to the board and see what they decide to do with it.
Good luck with that.
It's coming with a healthy tax increase, unfortunately. But we have a number of things we have to do, including one of our largest fire stations is no longer able to staff the station, and it serves the main part of the locality. So that comes with a price tag of 10 new firefighters and $1 million plus in need for money. So it's going to be an interesting discussion with the board this year. May hasten my retirement.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Guess we need a motion to adjourn then.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn, thank you.
Have a great weekend, y'all.
Thank
Same to you.
Oh, man, he's always.